Perete Aronsson, who's the first keynote speaker, will talk. The title of the intervention is a little bit different from here. Well,
have it there.
I have this one, the National Museums Negotiation, the Past for a Desired Future. Is it the same? No.
Yeah.
Is it the same? Fantastic. Okay, Peter, you can.
It is the same. I haven't fooled you around. Thank you very much for inviting me to this very important moment in the life of your project, but also I would say for European-funded research. I don't think it's a coincidence that we have similar areas of considerations, because I think we have answered a similar call within the same strain from the European Commission, and I think it's very good that they have this kind of continuity of making calls, making adjustments, and creating new projects. And I think it's also wise for us to keep connected within these calls and to exchange results when we come to that, and perhaps also methods and inspirations on the way to that. And I can also see that it's a demanding moment right now. We have had a long morning with a lot of information on MeLa, and we now had a nice lunch, and usually after that you need some rest. But I try to keep you busy. I will give a brief presentation on UNAMUS, European National Museums project, which has run now for 1 year. And I will also try to hint at some of the results that might come from our project, and also suggest areas of strategies for collaboration that we might explore. The level of investments in national museums are quite high in contemporary society. The motives and hopes are often a mixture of a will to secure a scientific and relevant understanding of the national heritage, community integration, stimulating creativity and cultural dialogue, and creating attractions for a burgeoning experience economy. In England and the in France and in Netherlands, there are currently planned for new national museums, very much centered around a canon on sort of the national essence of the country, for communicating a strong ethnic canon. A path also chosen by a country like Denmark. A great many other museums, Canada, New Zealand, but also in Sweden and United Kingdom, hail a more multicultural approach, downplaying the traditional national aspects of narrative and inviting new citizens to a more diverse idea of society, very much like the dialectics in your own project here, in the MeLa project. Ethnographic museums open with a post-colonial invitation to dialogue all over the world, in tension with strong demands for restitution of objects, ranging from human remains of Samis to the Elgin marbles of Acropolis. It is a contested billion-dollar cultural industry, creating, negotiating, and reinforcing ideas of values, belonging, and ownership. The European National Museums, Identity Politics, the Uses of the Past, and the European Citizen is the name of the project I am coordinating. This research project explores the creation and power of the heritage created and presented by European national museums to the world. It is a European invention, but it has spread all over the world, and it's very vital in East Asia, for example, where national museums are invested and built with very, very high-scale investments. This institution is a symbolic part of also of contemporary society, which you cannot go past without taking notice of. National museums are defined and explored in our project as processes of institutionalized negotiations where material collections and displays make claims and are recognized as articulating and representing national values and realities. This is a long sentence, but we try here to get down to our definition. It's not about state ownership, It's about a function that is performed by one or a set of museums, more usually a set of museums in each nation. Questions asked in the projects are, as we have heard in some of your work packages, why, by whom, when, and with what material, and with what results and future possibilities are these museums shaped? Now, we are looking at, I mean, these museums, they do sell themselves as a sort of eternal heritage, unchanging, material. The persuasion is that this is so factual, this is not changing. So our perspective are naturally the opposite. It is a moving, it's a process, it is a, where you have chosen other words. I would say that negotiation is the sort of key word for how we understand these dynamics between often opposite claims that do produce museums. Many of the negotiations and conflicts behind the scenes in museums have a long-standing trajectory, not by being mishaps, but as part of the value of the institutions in making them relevant cultural forces, which have been at play over the last 2.5 centuries. The ideas behind the creation of national museums developed slowly out of the practice of representing, ordering, and exploring the world by making collections and displaying them. A higher appreciation of the materiality of being and of values as a road to knowledge and prosperity challenged earlier religious and idealistic ideas where the futility of matter was central. The shock wave of the French Revolution and the Napoleonic contest moved valuables across the continent, and though countries were later liberated from occupation, the need to represent themselves as nations to strengthen the will of the subjects to defend their unity and sovereignty with arms, but also with pride, identification, community building, and economic activity of a national dimension not seen before. The creation of national museums was one of the prestigious means of processing the urge for knowledge, education, and grandeur, not only through representing an existing world, but by their establishment presenting and creating new ideals of communities for the future. Europe has since then seen industrialism, colonialism, 2 world wars, the Cold War, the fall of the Soviet Empire, migrations, globalization, and environmental threats, while at the same time growing to tremendous affluence and prosperity. Trying to understand and handle tensions created by this history and change is part of the cultural infrastructure of contemporary Europe and the world. National museums are authoritative spaces. They are authoritative spaces for the display and negotiation of community and citizenship. And they have a scientific advantage for comparative exploration of being there over time and in all nation states. That's why we picked them, really. It's not because they are the most important cultural artifacts creating national imaginaries. There are many more of these. It might be film or art or literature, but national museums is a recognizable entity that do exist in all countries, so we can use them as a comparative window to see processes usually only studied locally and in one nation in a comparative perspective, to give a completely different assessment of the forces behind them. The first negotiation made by any museum is pointing to an object and arguing that it represents a unique or typical value. From this follows the authoritative and sometimes contested decision what type of reality or value the object does represent. Is it the natural world, outstanding art, craft tradition, an historic event of us, or a foreign culture? The struggles of indigenous people to make their representation of their cultures travel from a natural history museum to other departments of the museum as a model of the world are part of that negotiation. This shows one of the dimensions where knowledge and politics do interact explicitly. A political community in the making is in need of scientific support for its ancienity, its coherence and qualities over time. Through the museums, the quality and unity of the culture is composed to an orchestration of unity in diversity. Usually it's not a simple story of we are one united people. It has to handle difference. It has to build a trustworthy image of the unity that is also having diversity within itself. And that goes for 19th century, and that goes for contemporary society. It's the same drive to construct consent. This involves tuning down political controversies, domesticating differences in favor of the aesthetic pleasure of high art, or the admiration and presentation of class and regional difference in an open-air museum like Skansen in my home country, or in the ethnographic collection of in Museo Nacional dell'Arte and Tradizioni Popolari in Ur, where this picture might be from. You can't really tell, because it could be from any museum in Europe, because that's an image of unity in diversity that you will find in any museum, dare I say, in the world. I mean, I saw similar in Taiwan and in Taipei also, that you will represent minorities as having beautifully crafted clothes, not by being killed through colonial actions.